All right, welcome back. Hope you had a great weekend. Today we're continuing our RBT exam review with our latest RBT mock exam. We're going to go through the next set of questions together and break them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out btexamreview.com. That link is in the comments below. We also have a YouTube join button now, which you can become part of our membership if you'd like to support us further. Other than that, let's keep working hard, keep studying hard. Get to our questions. Question 1. If you're using a token economy with your client, which of the following choices would function as the most effective backup reinforcer? Key here is knowing what a backup reinforcer is. Now, this is a little more high-level token economy thinking, but we need to know it. So in a token economy, we have our tokens, obviously, and then we exchange those tokens. And what we exchange those tokens for are considered our backup reinforcers. Token economies and tokens are only as valuable as the backup reinforcers. That's how tokens get their reinforcing properties. We pair tokens with backup reinforcers. So it's very important that our backup reinforcers are actually reinforcing and actually motivating. So in this case, we're looking for the choice. What will we choose to pair with our tokens? Which backup reinforcer are we going with? A, Halloween candy left over that no one ate. If this is Halloween candy that no one ate, then how preferred is it really? Is it going to be a great backup reinforcer to give candy that they didn't want in exchange for tokens? Probably not. A doesn't seem very strong. B, a toy truck that the client never opened from Christmas. So the toy truck was given and the client never opened it. Now think about when kids get presents, how excited they are. They want to open them immediately. If they never even open this toy truck, chances are it's not highly preferred. Remember, we're looking for the most preferred item that's really going to function as a reinforcer. C, a 10-minute break on the computer, which the clients they love. All right, we have verbal indication the client loves 10-minute breaks on the computers, that they want this 10-minute break on the computer. So far, this is much stronger than leftover candy and presents. And then D, a few items you read about online. What we never want to do is generalize to all kids preference and reinforcer assessments. Just because you read a list of what kids like or what kids like these days, it doesn't mean every kid will, especially with some of the populations that we work with who can have eccentric interests. We can't just go online and pick a bunch of items and then give them to the kids. When we're doing a token economy, we need to do a preference and a reinforcer assessment to really identify, hey, what can we use as backup reinforcers? In this case, the 10-minute break that the clients that they love is going to be better than the other three, which there's no indication is going to function as a reinforcer. Jay never wants to participate in social skills with peers. Jay's RBT develops a plan. On Monday, Jay starts in the treatment room. And on Tuesday, she reinforces Jay if he starts outside the hallway of his peers. Then she reinforces if Jay starts work near his peers. Then she finally reinforces if Jay engages with peers. This is an example of what? I think this is a very easy question if you understand your concepts, because let's think about what we're doing here. What are we trying to build up to? Trying to build up to Jay participating in social skills with peers. And how are we doing that? Well, on Monday, we start in the treatment. So we're away from peers, no big deal. Tuesday, we get closer to the peers. Now we're in the hallway and we give reinforcement. Then Wednesday, Jay starts work near his peers. So now we're even closer. Finally, when Jay engages with peers, which is our terminal goal, reinforce. So when we reinforce approximations of behavior, steps and closer to the final behavior, what are we doing? Is this negative reinforcement? Are we taking anything away from Jay to increase the behavior? We're not. We're positively reinforcing Jay for getting closer and closer to the behavior we want to see. We're looking at these approximations as we get closer, reinforcing. So what we're doing is shaping. Remember, shaping is just reinforcing approximations of behavior. Our terminal final behavior is participating in social skills with peers. So as Jay gets closer and closer, reinforce until finally he engages with peers. We're not task chaining. It's not steps in a specific behavior, right? We're not looking at steps and engaging with peers. We are trying to get them to engage in the behavior of social skills. Okay, there's a big difference. So it's not a task chain. We're shaping it up where they finally participate with peers altogether. And then positive punishment. No, it says in the question we're reinforcing. So positive punishment doesn't make sense here. We're not decreasing J's behavior. So all of these approximations of behavior are an example of shaping. A BCBA is watching several videos on how to ride a skateboard as taught by skateboarding experts. She then attempts to ride the skateboard herself. As she is doing this, she is riding down the steps she observes. The BCBA is conducting a what? What is the BCBA doing? I think, again, it's a pretty easy question if you understand your concepts. We know she's riding down steps as she observes skateboarding. She's watching experts. She's going outside and trying to ride a skateboard herself and writing down step by step, hey, what's the best way to do this? How are they able to pull off riding a skateboard? And why do we do this? Well, because we want to take complex behaviors like riding a skateboard and break them down into simple steps we can teach. And the process of doing that is called a task analysis. Remember, the task analysis is when we're actually breaking down the behavior into steps. Once we have our steps, we put those steps in order, and now we have a chain. And then we teach those steps using a task chain. Task analysis comes first. We break down the behavior, and then we teach it using forward or backward or some sort of chaining. It isn't a functional behavior assessment. She's not going around indirectly, directly observing the client, right? She's just trying to develop a chain. She's analyzing the task as a whole. And it isn't a functional analysis. A functional analysis is manipulating things to determine functions of behavior. She's not determining why skateboarding is happening. All she knows is she wants to teach it, and she needs steps. So she has to analyze the task. In other words, the BCBA is conducting a task analysis. You and your friends are having a game night on Friday and watching TV. You all agree to take a drink each time you see a political ad on TV. The next morning, your friend says you must have seen 50 ads. What type of measurement did your friend use? I don't know about you, but I'm seeing ads everywhere, right? And they are constant. Okay, too many to count. In your case, you had a game night, watching TV, TV's on in the background, and you just play a game. Every time we see an ad, we're going to drink. First ad, second ad, third ad, so on and so forth. In the morning, the friend says, I saw 50 ads. Well, how did they measure that? How did they measure that they saw 50 ads? They must use something. Did they use duration? Did they time how long the ads were? Did they time the length of time they were at the house? Were they timing anything? No, they were just counting how many ads. Were they using latency? Well, latency is the time in between the SD and a response. There's no indication there's an SD timed between an SD and the response here, right? So latency is out. Frequency is just a count. All your friend did was say frequency on the ads, and the frequency they came up with was 50. Frequency is a simple count. Don't overcomplicate that. All it is counting something as it occurs, right? And remember, we want a clear beginning and end, making it easy to count, but that's all frequency is. And then enter response time, just like latency, we're measuring the time in between two things. We're not measuring time in between ads here. We're not doing any sort of timing. All your friend did was count how many ads. Now it might have been a prediction, but the measurement they're using is count. And when we use count as a measurement, we're simply using frequency. A functional behavior assessment determines that a client will most likely engage in escape behaviors when presented with a task demand. What type of chaining might be best to teach the client? I like this question because it gets you thinking, what am I going to use to really engage and teach this client? What do we know about the client? We know they engage in escape behaviors when presented with a task demand. So what can you expect if you were to say use A for chaining? Well, you could expect that as soon as you present the task to them, or you say, okay, let's do the first step, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to start to escape, right? That is what your assessment determined. So assuming your assessment is right, you can already predict that forward chaining might not be that effective. Because now you're going to have to start to deal with behaviors and all of these maladaptive things instead of what you're trying to do, which is teach using a chain. So what about backwards chaining? Well, in backwards chaining, what are we doing? We're helping the client do the task and then reinforcing for completing the task. And this gives a good incentive for escape-maintained clients to work through a task. Because we're working through the whole thing for them. Let's just say toothbrushing. We're working toothbrushing with them, right? We're basically doing it for them. And at the end, all they need to do is turn the water off and they get reinforcement. It's a great way to combat escape because they've done the task. They're still doing the task, but their reinforcement is escape, right? Because once you complete the task, you're done. You get to escape from it. And that's the idea with backwards chaining. So if you have a client who engages in escape behaviors, really strongly consider backwards chaining as a possibility. Total task chaining is probably the worst because now total task chaining, they've got to do the whole task. And if they're already engaging in escape behaviors, there's a good chance they're not making it through that entire chain. And then behavior chain interruption strategy, also maybe not a great idea. Let's say you do get momentum and they're on step 4 of 7, and then you interrupt that chain. Good chance it's going to be difficult to get them back on schedule. So if you have a client who engages in escape behaviors, really, really strongly consider backwards chaining, because in backwards chaining, escape is used as a reinforcer. Bender doesn't want to go to his cousin's birthday party this weekend, so he calls the teacher a bad name and she gives him detention. Bender spends Saturday in detention instead of the party. Detention will most likely function as what? All right, be careful here, okay? First off, reinforcement and punishment questions. We need to identify, is the behavior increasing or is the behavior decreasing? Well, here we don't know, okay? And when we don't know, then we need to make our best judgment call. In this case, what did Bender want to do? Well, he didn't want to go to the birthday party. His behavior allowed him to not go to the birthday party. So we can reasonably predict that not going to the birthday party, right, is reinforcement for this behavior. So in the future, Bender, again, might get detention instead of going to the birthday party, right? Now, if we assume it's reinforcement, then we have to ask ourselves, was something added or taken away? Well, let's look at Bender's behavior, okay? Antecedent, Bender doesn't want to go to a cousin's birthday party, so he's sitting in class. The behavior is calling the teacher a bad name. The consequence is teacher gives detention. The teacher is handing him detention. He's getting detention. In the moment, she's not removing him from anything, right? She gives him detention. Let's say a detention slip. Is that positive or negative? Well, it's positive because something's being added. Detention is being added. So, calls the teacher a bad name, gives him detention. Bender spends Saturday in detention instead of the party. Detention is most likely going to function as positive reinforcement. It's a good example of these traditional ideas of punishment don't always apply, right? Traditionally, detention is a very punishing thing. But if they're using detention to avoid something else, not so much. And again, we're looking at the behavior of giving detention, right? We're adding the detention in response to calling a teacher a bad name, which is exactly what Bender wanted. At an in-home session, Jimmy's client suddenly starts scratching themselves extremely hard. Jimmy knows that the client will engage in behavior to gain their iPad, and Jimmy just took the iPad away. What is Jimmy's top priority in this situation? This can be a tricky one. It's an ethical question, and it can be tricky in practice because as good RBTs, you know you're always trying to avoid reinforcing the behavior, the target behavior, okay? And in this case, Jimmy knows that if they give the iPad, it's reinforcement. However, Jimmy's client is scratching themselves extremely hard. Now, what is Jimmy's priority here? Okay, because he knows he doesn't want to reinforce this scratching, but you also can't allow a client to just go on hurting themselves. Because what is our number one rule? Do no harm. We don't want our clients to harm themselves, and we don't want to cause any harm to our client. It's our job to protect them. So in this case, Jimmy's client is scratching themselves extremely hard. What is Jimmy's top priority? A, do not give the client the iPad. Ideally, if Jimmy can avoid it, we want to not give the iPad because we know that will reinforce the scratching. However, there are situations where it might be unavoidable. They're threatening others, they're threatening themselves. Sometimes you just have to alleviate the situation. Now, be very careful with that, and that needs to be talked about with your supervisor. In this case, hopefully an emergency plan is in place, right? A crisis emergency plan, as it should be, so you know how to react in this situation. But his top priority is not necessarily not giving the client the iPad. B, restrain the client so they cannot move. Definitely not. Restraint should almost never be used unless you're well-trained. Even then, it needs to be a very specific case, okay? That is definitely not the top priority. C, keep the client safe is what we're looking for. You want to keep your client safe above all else. Do no harm is our number one rule, okay? So in the moment, we need to act and engage, and then we need to tell our supervisor immediately about what happened. D, ignore the scratching behavior. Well, you can't just ignore it. What if they are breaking their skin? What if they're starting to bleed? What if they're really injuring themselves? You can't just ignore that behavior. You have to do something about it. You have to do no harm. You have to keep the client safe. So in this case, where they start scratching themselves extremely hard, Jimmy's top priority is still keep the client safe. This function is not socially mediated. All right, pretty easy question, but I just always like to throw a function question in there because it's the most important thing, in my opinion, that you can learn. So when we talk about socially mediated, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about uh, reinforcement and punishment and consequence that involve two or more people, right? Socially mediated just means the consequence is given by another person. Automatic, as we know, also known as sensory nowadays, is not socially mediated. Automatic essentially means alone. The consequence is inflicted upon the self, and it is just self driven. Okay. Self stimulatory behaviors are automatic because it doesn't require a socially mediated reinforcer. Attention is, of course, socially mediated, right? Somebody giving you attention has to be socially mediated. Tangible, somebody giving you the tangible. Okay. If no one's around to get you the item, okay, then that behavior is just automatic, right? Escape, you're escaping from something presented by somebody, okay? So automatic is the one that is not socially mediated. Attention, tangible, and escape are. And then finally, which of the following behaviors would most likely be the most socially valid behavior to teach a learner? Tricky question, kind of a hard question. It's a learning opportunity. So when we talk about socially valid, we mean meaningful. We want to teach behaviors that are meaningful, that actually change the lives of our clients and others. A lot of times you can get into situations and cases where you might be teaching things that really don't have importance in our clients' lives, okay? Compared to other things we could be teaching them. So when we talk about socially valid, what is the most meaningful behavior? A, memorizing their favorite characters' names on a TV show. This could hold some value. I mean, if they want to talk to their friends or maybe it makes them feel good. But is it really the most meaningful behavior to teach? Probably not. And we probably, if that's the only thing we're working on, shouldn't be involved. Making paper airplanes. Making paper airplanes really doesn't hold much value. It doesn't hold much meaning in their life overall. Asking for help during a school activity. Now, here's a skill, asking for help, that will help them throughout their lives. An extremely important skill to have. You need it. People who can't ask for help tend to struggle, especially on harder things they don't know how to do. Teaching them to ask for help is extremely meaningful. It's going to change their life. And then playing the flute. Playing an instrument is good. Okay. It can be good for the mind, good for the body. But compared to a skill like asking for help, which they can use in every situation, at the store, in public, at school, at work, there's no limit to where they can use asking for help. So the most meaningful behavior here to teach would be asking for help. And that's what we're saying when we talk about social validity. Fantastic. That was our RBT exam review today. Please check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Make sure you subscribe. And of course, we always offer 3 practice exams, a study guide, and our famous combo pack. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.